Hey everybody, welcome back to Bacon's Bass Place. I'm Aaron Bacon, and today I wanted to go over something with you guys that I feel gets overlooked a little bit in a lot of people's slap bass playing. What we're going to be looking at today is how to perform the perfect slap bass pop. How to pop perfectly. So when learning slap bass, there's kind of a large learning curve, it takes a long time. It took me at least 2 years to be able to do anything, to be able to get like any sort of hitting that felt okay, and that was like when I was still doing overhand slap bass, which isn't a more beginner version by any means. I just ended up later switching to underhand slap bass, where you actually hit right through the string, instead of just hitting it like a whip, which is overhand. So, it took me about 5 years to gain any sort of confidence in slap bass. It took me at least 5 years to be able to feel like I had any kind of confidence. And you know what the kicker was about that? Is that it took me about another 5 years after that to realize that 5 years ago I really didn't have really any confidence in slapping to speak of. So, it takes a long time to start learning, and it takes a long time to get good at slap bass, and it's just an endless curve. It's not like there's this point where, all of a sudden I've mastered slap bass, okay? So we're just going to work on one of the fundamental building blocks of what is implicit in slap bass playing, and that is the pop, what I call the pop stroke. So, you probably have a couple questions about the pops, what makes a pop perfect, since we're talking about the perfect pop today. What fingers do I use? What angle do I rotate at? What part of my finger do I do? We're going to touch on all of those things today, guys, so don't worry, stick around, subscribe, and we're going to be hitting lots of fun stuff like this all the time. Make sure you like that smash button if you're getting some good stuff out of this, guys. So first thing, I'm just going to run through my basic technique of how I like to perform the pop. Then we're going to address some of your questions after this, and then after that we're just going to go over maybe a couple last little closing pointers and tips for you guys to improve your slap bass playing and make your pops sound more better and develop that perfect pop that we're striving for today. So, a pop is one of those slap bass strokes that I consider to need what I call the setup phase. This means that you can't really just jump into doing it, It means that you have to put your finger there first before you can do it. It's a 2-phase stroke. That means it has a setup phase and an execution. That means we have to put our finger in place, then we do the pop, right? So, that's the first thing. You got to find a way to include your setup phase. Usually I do that combined with a slap. So when you're doing your setup phase for your pop, I find it a lot more ergonomic, easier, more efficient. You get a lot more bang for your buck. You get more out of the energy that you're spending this way by combining the setup phase with your slap. So when you slap, we shouldn't have our fingers hanging out here, and then we're going to go do a pop right after that, and we have to move our finger all the way down there to get it in position to do a slap, right? So that means we had to do 3 motions right here. We had to do one is a down, the other one is moving our finger over, putting it into the setup phase, and that's number 2, and then number 3 is actually doing the pop. So when we combine the setup phase and our slap, it means that we can actually get rid of that second phase or the third phase, or we can reduce it from 3 to 2 phases. Because when we're slapped, we're landing with our finger in the setup phase already. Okay, you can set your finger up on the down phase where you're also doing your slap. Okay, so when you slap, after you've slapped, your finger should be in position already. You should have already set up your finger to do that pop before you've done it, at the same time that you do your slap, okay? You got to do the setup phase. And then you get 2 motions. Instead of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You know, that's inefficient. It's also a lot less accurate. You know, it's going to be hard to find the note that you're going for if you don't put it in place before you're trying to get there, you know. It's going to make your time off. That's where a lot of people run into the staccato issue with slap bass, which we're going to address in another issue about how to address the issues of slap bass. Right now, though, we're just trying to get the perfect pop. Once you're doing the pop, you know, if sometimes you have other strokes that you're doing on the up strokes. There's a down phase and an up phase, you know. Usually the down phase is only on the for the slap bass, and then all of your other strokes all end on the up phase, right? So we got a down, up. And with slap and pop, if we're going to include our slap in our phase of the setup, in our setup phase, then we just have a down, up, and that's slap, pop, slap, pop. I don't know how well you guys can see on this video exactly what my right hand here is doing, but I'm going to get you guys a closer up view so you can see that a little more closely. But what I'm really doing here, when I'm doing the pop, is I'm actually... It's not so much because I'm pulling with my arm or because I'm rotating with my wrist or I'm pulling down or anything. It's actually more of a squeezing of the finger. It's like you're pulling a trigger. You know, that's kind of the pop. When I'm set up, my finger is like this. And then when I go to execute, I actually push down with my finger into my hand. So right here I've set up, and then I squeeze my finger into my hand. You see that? It can be done with either finger, your middle finger or your pointer finger. And it's less about pulling. It's less about twisting, you know. It's more actually in the finger. That's the whole trick to getting the perfect pop for me, is getting that leverage that comes from finger strength and the twisting motion that comes when you rotate your finger inwards like that. You know, maybe there's a little bit of pushing downwards with your hand, and that'll make it rotate outwards a little bit, and that's going to give you some leverage on your pop too. So you don't really need to like pull. It's all just mechanics that work ergonomically with each other. You know, it's more about leverage than strength, okay? The final thing that we do when we're popping, or when we're playing slap bass doing any stroke, is the follow through. You know, that's where you see me actually moving my hand up and away from the bass like this. It's from the follow through phase, which helps you to flow, helps you to be smooth in your playing, is actually follow through. It's what actually kind of gets you this alternating motion. That means the motion that your hand is doing after you've done the pop or slap or whatever. You know, like you can consider the setup phase combined with the slap the same thing when you're doing the pop. It can be considered follow through because it's something that you're doing after your thumb hits the string. You're setting, well, it's technically not after, I guess. It's at the same time. You don't want to do it after, but so maybe it wouldn't be considered technically a follow-through because that happens after. But you guys know what I'm saying. When you do a pop, you know, your hand typically doesn't stay here. It likes to move. It probably doesn't want to move that much because that's going to be really... That's, you see, like, Lewis Johnson's probably the only guy I've seen just wailing away like that. And if I try and do that, I can barely even find the strings I'm trying to hit. So it's all about the follow-through. It's how you get the continuity of your motion down. Alright, it's time to look at some questions that happen all the time when people are talking about slap bass and some stuff that you might have about this video. First off, what is the perfect pop? Well, we kind of went over that a little bit in the earlier description of how the whole system works with trying to combine everything and just how I explained the way to actually perform a pop. I find the thing that makes the perfect pop, you know, is it's all about context and it's all about control. And both of those things are heavily associated to dynamics, okay? So context and control, what does that mean? Well, context means you don't want to don't want to do that in a ballad, okay? That's terrible context. You will never be hired ever again to play any job, and you should probably just, like, you know, work on your context and dynamics of your slap bass playing before you try executing a lot of that anymore, and stick to your normal fingerstyle playing, because that's terrible context. So that's kind of what I mean by context. What you want to do is think about dynamics. If you have that's a good way I like to make funky riffs, and I like to accent notes that are on the pop by popping them and also fret muting most of the other notes. Again, so I wasn't killing it there, you know, I wasn't popping so hard that I'm like busting my fingers and busting my basses, you know. You don't want to do that, okay? You're going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt your basses, and, you know, that's bass abuse, and that's, you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is use your ears. Make sure that you can hit those accents where they belong, okay? If you're playing a line, a good place to start is like put it on the snare. Kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. All right. So the most important thing about learning to play slap bass contextually is using your ears, okay? The first place that this really jumped out at me was in a lot of heavy metal music, okay? There's a lot of really cool, fancy stuff that you can get into if you listen for it and if you're going for the right songs, you know? That's some fun stuff. Seriously, guys, like playing metal, I think, is one of the best applications for slap bass. That's an old APHELION riff from my old band APHELION. That's kind of where I came up with a lot of the original concepts and ideas of how to apply this stuff to metal. And then afterwards, I joined a death metal band that was called Forged in Fire here in Winnipeg. And that's where the style of metal was less proggy than I'm used to, right? I was just in like weird eclectic, like jazzy metal. So to just go into like a straight kind of thrashy death metal band, you know, I had to entertain myself. So what did I do? I started slapping everything. You know, that kind of stuff, it works so good in metal because it's fast, it's loud, it's everything that you want to do, that people have tendencies to naturally do in slap bass. Is you got two dynamics usually, loud and louder, you know, and that's something that a lot of people really don't enjoy about slap bass. So that's why we got to work on using our dynamics properly, and that will help us develop a good sense of when it is contextually appropriate to play slap bass. The other thing which makes the perfect pop is control, which again comes down to dynamics. That means you got to be able to do it soft. Most of that was popping, guys. And if you paid attention, you'll see how I was started quiet and got really loud and aggressive there and then went quiet again. That is, I find, like probably the entire key to successful slap bass playing if you want to get out of the prison of only being able to play slap bass in that slap bass song, okay? If you want to make your slap bass versatile, you want to be able to play slap-based techniques that sort of have to do with it, with like, you know, this kind of stuff. A lot of palm muting stuff. It really opens up a lot of, you know, softer playing. Okay, slap bass techniques is really great. Dynamics is one of the most useful things to develop in your slap bass playing, okay? Guys, control. That's what goes into playing the perfect pop, okay? Is not overdoing it. Making sure that you can play it quietly. Can you slap under the mix? Or like use your ear to contextually put yourself properly in the mix through your technique, through your playing, through your right hand? You know, that takes a lot of ear work. And if you're used to slapping above the mix, it's going to feel like you're under the mix if you're appropriate, you know? So don't fall for that trap of finally getting down and you're no longer too loud and then you think you're too quiet, but you're actually just sitting in the mix properly. Bass player's worst enemy, that trap. Don't do it. So those are the two things I consider kind of main things about going into what makes the perfect pop is context and control. And those are both heavily related to listening and dynamics. So, next thing, common question, what finger do I use? Okay, and the answer to this is it should be interchangeable. I switch it up, like almost as often as just normal recessive style, finger style playing, where you're just doing your really strong alternating. You know, you can't do that with one finger. So if you want to get into faster popping, you know, you can't do that with one finger necessarily either. That's probably around as fast as I go. If you see Victor Wooten, he just like, he does these silly, how fast can you pop things in the middle of his bass solos. It's pretty awesome, and I can't even almost do that. But along that same line, if you get really comfortable with both fingers, so do all of these with just one finger, get all of the typical slap bassy grooves with your index finger. You know, I think I accidentally did my second finger there once or twice just habitually, but you want to do that with all of your index, and then do it with all of your middle. You know, once you're comfortable with that, then you want to just, you know, the basic position that I use for determining which string to do, that's one thing that helps with knowing which finger, is sometimes you can use them both to help you switch strings. That's one of the effective uses of switching fingers properly, is you can use it to switch strings. So that's slap, pop, pop, slap, pop, pop, slap, pop, pop, slap, pop, pop. You wouldn't really be able to do that with one finger. I mean, you can, but it's like, feels really awkward for me. So what I like to do is I have my thumb taking care of this business down here. I have my index finger taking care of this business on this string. And I have my middle finger taking care of this business. Okay, so you're getting the whole thumb, thumb, index, middle, thumb, thumb, index, middle, thumb, thumb, index, middle. If you guys aren't comfortable getting that up thumb yet, check out my other video on how to get the up thumb in your slap bass and start getting yourself into doing some double thumping. We haven't done too much on double thumping yet because we're still just working on the basics, but if you've been following my channel for a while, you've probably seen a good business of, you know, I like doing those up thumb things. I find them super ergonomic and economical and funky. And then, you know, you can just use both on the same one. Like that's a 2-finger pop. That's probably just the way to get your loudest pop. 2 fingers. But again, you're going to get rid of some of that ergonomic. You know? So ultimately, you want to be free with it. You want to be interchangeable. You want to just be able to See, I didn't think about anything I just did there, you know, but my fingers just kind of go with it because it's the way it is. I feel like the slap bass grip is like a fastball grip. You ever, or like a T-Rex grip or something, you know? Little visitional fingers for slap bass players. The third thing that I see a lot of people doing that I kind of incorporate less into my slap bass technique than I think is really crucial for a lot of people. And I kind of worked through this and developed it out of my system a little bit. And now it's still in there a little bit as a percentage, but it's not a main thing. And what I'm talking about is like the degree to which you rotate your wrist and or pull out, pull down towards the ground, pull out away from you, pull up towards you, or rotating your wrist. Those are small inflections on the motion that I'm doing. Mostly, it's like we were talking about before. It's in the fingers. It's in that actual bang, you know, I'm in the setup phase right here, and then I squeeze, you know, squeeze, and then the follow through is when you see me doing this, okay? That's just to make it fluid. That's not actually so much important in the mechanics. Okay, so a couple tips now we're going to get into that are just common useful things to get your slap bass playing a little more versatile is a couple different dynamics. So how can you pop quietly? Relax your finger, okay? Don't have a steel finger, just soft. You know? It's almost just like a normal recessive stroke that you're doing, except your finger's a little more bent. You're squeezing a little bit. You know, you don't squeeze as much. I'm not squeezing right into my finger. I'm just squeezing a little bit. You know, you get a nice quiet one with a relaxed finger. So that's how you do it. Relax your popping finger. Medium one is just the standard one we've been talking about, squeezing. That's just squeeze. Okay? That's the standard dynamic you should probably work from. Now, to play loud, there's a cool another little trick. We're good at English over here. There's another cool trick we're going to show you here about how to play the loud dynamic. And what I do is, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but we'll try and show you. I'm going to try and have another video for you here. But what you can do when you pop and when you do your squeeze is I'm actually pushing the outside of my finger's knuckle against the string above it. You see how I'm doing that? And that actually gives me extra leverage on the string I'm popping to push against the string above it. Will give you extra leverage. So that's how I get loud, is I push into it. Push and then pop. You know, not push then pop. They happen at the same time now. We want to be ergonomic in our motions. And what's the way to get the very loud pop? Okay, I'll tell you. You're just going to use 2 fingers. That's probably just the loudest way you can do it. Just use 2 fingers and just reef on it. That's the one where you want to pull. If you actually use like your shoulder and your arm strength, which is way more strength than you need to do a pop, you know, that's how you can get a good loud one. All right? So that's how to perform the perfect pop, guys. I hope you guys really got a lot out of this lesson, and I hope you guys' pops are improving after watching this. Let me know in the comments section down below if you found this useful. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me. And don't forget to smash the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share to your friends who are bass players. They know you're going to enjoy this. I'm going to be doing private online lessons if you guys want to start taking lessons from me one-on-one privately through whatever of the you know, online. We can do it in Facebook. There's Skype stuff. There's all kinds of ways we can do it. Get at me on the back end of my channel and we'll hook that up. So thanks for watching, guys. This has been Bacon's Bass Place. I'm Aaron Bacon again. See you next time.